welcome back to the SRC Ultimo Podcast. I'm Coco and I'm joined with Ahmed and Tom Wood. How's everyone going today?
Hi, really well, thank you. Awesome to be here, as the cliched podcast intro goes.
Thank you for joining us.
Do you want to give us a bit of an introduction to yourself, Tom, and your role at the university?
Okay, so I am Tom Wood. I am clearly a learning facilitator / lecturer at the uni, and I have been since 2016. And I mostly teach 3D stuff, 3D and VFX, or that's when I started, but I've got a very broad, which we'll get into, but I've got a very broad kind of experience set, so I kind of jump around to a lot of things, and I kind of just teach for the love of it. It's something that I always kind of wanted to do, and it's been something that's really just kind of been a really good thing to do for the last 5 years or so. And also I was a Billy Blue student a decade ago, and I started Billy Blue 2011 in the very, very first digital media course Billy Blue ever gave. So this is actually before they had 3D and game streams, really. It was actually a digital media course that, again, probably go into it, but was much more design focused and was a very different kind of course to the way it is today. But yeah, that was good fun. So about 2011, then 2012, and then I was lucky enough to get a job in my at the end of my second year. So I didn't end up finishing the course, but that's neither here nor there. Because it was a great course, that's what got me the job. It was just at the time it was better to work than do anything else. And then I started working. And I guess we'll go into that a little bit more in depth as we go. That's me. That's pretty much me. I mean, yeah. So I love 3D. I've got a passion for. Mostly. A lot of animation, but I'm a generalist. I am a pure generalist. So, I essentially pride myself on being able to use anything. And I think that's quite an important thing to be able to do, especially. Australian designers are reputed to be that level of kind of having that jack of all trades. Not the horrible jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing, but it's more just having skills in a lot of different things, because we are a smaller industry, but we're well regarded, and that's because of our ability to do a lot of different things. So that's kind of what I've been focusing on. So I'm not really the specific you are a 3D animator, you are a game designer, or as in like a modeler or something like that. I've done coloring work for VFX. I've done a lot of compositing work. I've done large scale projections on buildings. It's one of those things that you just kind of wherever it takes you, and a lot of explainers work, which again, that's a huge story in itself. Yeah, my coding skills and my kind of development skills are okay, but they're not great. I would never call myself a programmer by any stretch of the imagination. But I do write plugins and stuff for Python for VFX, just because you almost have to. Just because it makes your life really, really so much easier once you know that kind of stuff, just especially for animation. So it's always something that I always, I want to get people more excited about doing things that they're like, yeah, you're a designer, but you can code too. That's something that's something that is very important these days. Don't be scared of stuff, and don't be scared of maths. Maths is fine. When you're making stuff look cool,
easier than done.
Maths is actually fun. I know, it's ridiculous. It's
fun when it works.
I disagree, but okay.
Yeah, that's right. No, well, I've got a unique perspective. I used to hate maths, and then I also actually, this is something I didn't in the intro, because I did a science degree before, because I kind of wanted to be a doctor. I've got a family of doctors, that kind of thing. So I was doing medical science stuff at Sydney Uni, and I did a science degree in pharmacology and anatomy. Actually, no, it was just pharmacology, but I was like one subject across a double major in anatomy as well. And I did like crazy maths in that, but I didn't actually start to get maths until I just was able to type in, wow, that actually does something to make something awesome looking in 3D. And then I actually start to get the concepts that they've been trying to explain to me since I was 15. And so now I can tell you about vector maths and matrices and stuff that I had no idea. What is this? What is this? Would never have thought that would be something that it would. But now I'm just like, that's awesome.
How did you end up in digital design from there?
It's a weird one, actually. Yeah, it's a weird one because I essentially wanted to go that route. Just I think of the age old story of just kind of following what your family does and that kind of stuff. Again, both my parents. I mean, I've got a family of doctors. Both my parents are doctors. My sister's a doctor. My brother is has a PhD in mechatronics engineering. It's just one of these things that's just like that's the route you're going to go. But my grandma was actually is an artist and in pastels and oils who actually Mary Wood, who was she actually exhibited a fair bit in places like Paris and stuff, so she was actually quite a successful real artist. And so she taught me to paint. Not very well. No, I mean, not she did teach me poorly, but I didn't learn very well. But I was the one that always had that kind of bit more of that drive. But I never thought it would be a thing. And then after I did my science, I went to Europe for a year after that, and I went, nah. And also my dad went to me, you don't want to be a doctor. And I'm like, but yes, I do. He's like, no, you don't. I'm like, oh, no, I don't really. One of those things that you just kind of, yeah, one of those kind of aha moments. And then, as we know, Billy Blue is very good at marketing, and I saw an ad, and I just went, well, if I'm going to do it, let's just do it. And because I was a mature age student at that point, because I was like 20. I mean, that's that's as it was. I mean, technically is. So you're not even to, or I was 21. Can't remember. And then I jumped in and did the very accelerated course as well. So it was before trimesters existed, but they did a semester over the summer, so it was essentially a trimester year. So I did 2 years in a year and a bit, and then I got work and stuff. So it was just kind of like it all clicked into place. Because I loved I mean, I've always had computers and things as well. So the kind of art that I wanted to do ended up being digital. That's just kind of how it fit. But yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. That's interesting. And what has your experience been as well as sort of coming back to Billy Blue as a lecturer, having been here as a student?
I mean, the experience is interesting because a big part of the reason why I came back was because there were things that I thought that in an arrogant way, it was just like, I thought that I kind of had an insight into, maybe could, and I'm saying in an arrogant way, I was put in my place quite quickly, as I deserved to be. But I thought that, oh, okay, I wasn't taught some of these things as well. Like I wasn't the way that it was all presented to me wasn't the way that I wanted it to be presented to me. But so that was a big motivator. But also, I'd always just thought that for some reason in the back of my head, I always just wanted to teach. I don't know what it was. And so I got a text message from Ivan Quintana, if you know.
Oh yeah.
And he sent me a text message, and he just like at a perfect time as well, because I didn't really have any work at the time either. So I was kind of considering some kind of change. So I was kind of having a few months off. And then I got a message from Ivan, and he goes like, do you want to teach? And I'm like, yeah, I do. yeah, thank you. I mean, it's weird how it just falls into your lap like that. And then when you arrive, and then when you know how things actually work, I mean, you're never going to make everything perfect, but it's definitely fun. And also, you're never going to be you're never going to be the perfect person for everyone, because teaching is such an innate kind of like relation, especially for us as designers. The medium, the media, they're so broad, and what you have to learn is so broad. 99% of it you have to do yourself, and then the push has to come from someone like us, and a little bit of the kind of like, okay, well, this is where you can go with it, rather than the like, this is every, like, I can't give you a piece of paper and go, this is how you're going to be successful in your own way, because you have to relate it back to your experience and your knowledge, your reality is. That sounds wanky, but as an artist, like what you actually, what actually interests you. And so that's where it becomes quite difficult, because it's trying to marry those design elements with the crazy technical stuff that is so innate to how we do everything now. When again, you kind of have to when students have to be so self-motivated that's why teaching becomes hard, because you have to tailor it to an individual student, but you can't really make that student be you can try to get the excitement in there, and you can try, but I mean, it's all in the end all up to them. which is, I think, actually beyond most of what I teach, the most important thing that I try to instill is just, guys, look at this. This is awesome what we're doing. You just need to work really hard at it to be good at it. And because it's also incredibly competitive. So there's no guarantees of anything at all. And you have to have your eyes open coming in. But if you work hard, you'll be good. I mean, it's that thing. If you work hard enough, you'll be there. Yeah. Which I'm sure you guys know by now.
Yep.
It's one of the interesting things I think with the sort of design and especially in the digital media space in Australia, in that industry, on one end of the spectrum, there's we have a lack of tech talent here, but then at the same time, where there is, it's become super competitive. So it's sort of it's just interesting and hard to balance. And it's exactly right, like what you were saying. There's no guarantees.
Yeah. I mean, it is and it isn't competitive insofar as once you're in, you're fine. And as long as you continue that, I mean, I've got some stories about reputation stuff that we should probably talk about, but it is based on your reputation. So once you're in, you'll have as much work as you need. And it does. I mean, it does depend on what you do, but in general, that's the case. It's because it is, you are the commodity, and the work you do is, I mean, it has to be at a high level, but then everyone's is at a high level, so it stops being such that stops being the thing that you're selling yourself on, because everyone can do the things. you can. I mean, yes, of course there are differences. Someone can actually lead and someone can't, and all that. But again, that comes in a slightly different way. But it's much more that you have to have those relationships, and that's why it's much harder to get into, because you need to forge those relationships. And also those relationships are easy to lose as well. If you make mistakes, and that's, that comes into play big time with pressure and dealing with some just the realities of having all of that on you at all times. Knowing that is the case is something that's always going to be a bit of a kind of thing that just kind of sits on your brain. But it's, I don't know. It's there are other ways as well, though. Like, so I'm talking from the perspective of a freelancer. You can, and plenty of people do. I mean, I did for 4 years, just work at a studio and and those were my first 4 years of work. And just doing that, and so then you just do. It's almost a normal career. It's almost no, as in it is that kind of go to work, and then you just rise up through, and you can stay there. I mean, that's a lot more common in games than it is in other media, because of the fact that those are longer term projects, and they don't need to scale as much over time because you have a stronger core team. Whereas other VFX projects, they kind of like, the movie's on now, so we need to scale up by 10 times at the studio. So that's when they hire everyone they can find. And so that's the kind of freelancey life. But yeah, I mean, it all just depends on, I don't know, where you start, how you get into, what you're comfortable with. It is a tough thing. It's a really tough thing. Wouldn't wish on anyone.
You've been on sort of both sides of the fence now, where you've worked for companies and been your own boss as a freelancer. Do you have a preference?
Me personally, I'm a really bad freelancer, really bad, for a few reasons. But I wish that I was working full time at if in terms of the design. In terms, I mean, it's not as if I'm actually looking for that work for a few reasons I'll get into. But for me personally, I'm not one of those people that is so self-motivated that they can be on that phone. I'm even bad at putting timesheets in. Like, no, that's I mean, that's the truth. I'm really bad at putting timesheets in. It's something that I love the work, but just even the normal day-to-day stuff of trying to organize all that, I'm really bad at. I mean, obviously I can do it, but it's one of the worst experiences ever. So, I mean, yes, there are, I mean, a few things have changed for me. So this is a personal thing, but I became a carer for my dad a few years ago because he's got dementia. So in terms of what my job is, I can't have a full-time job. because that's actually and so that's why teaching is awesome for me, and also any other jobs I pick up are awesome. But last few years has mostly been that plus this. So in terms of what I would like, once I'm able to, I'll definitely be jumping back into hopefully a proper role, a long-term role somewhere, and that's definitely what I prefer. But that's not the reality of today as it is. But
Yeah. We had David Kay on last week, and he's sort of been on his own entrepreneurial journey. And we were talking to him about how, when you become your own boss, you realize quite quickly that you're suddenly responsible for every single seed that you sow.
yeah, I mean, it's just amazing watching people that are incredibly good at it. And again, that's not me. I mean, it's something. I'm 33 years old. It's something I know now, and I wouldn't have known in my early 20s. But something with experience, you just come to know what you want, what you can do, and I mean, again, kind of who you are. That's a weird one, but that is very much part of. I mean, especially given the industry is a representation of yourself, that really is the at the forefront of your mind at all the time. Like, your job is you, so that's so much harder. And when you're the boss of you, and then your life and your job and then organization, and then of course any money, like of course just living is a thing that you have to do, and all of that comes into this like weird place where there are some people that are just amazing at it, and I'm so envious of them. Like there are people that like rule the world from their own little places, like, and that's just something I'm so envious of. But for me, I think it's much more. I think I need a little bit more structure. Just for, because I'm not again, I said I wasn't that self-motivated, and I can be for some things, but not enough to be a one-man band in any sense of that. Yeah.
I think in saying that, like, what are things that you've done like throughout that journey for you to kind of help you stay, like, I guess, sane with all of those things going on?
I can say that I didn't. I mean, to be honest, like, yeah. There were lots of things that I made some very bad decisions in my 20s. Very, very, very bad ones. And so it's more that when you don't know when you don't know how your brain works to the extent of when it's put into these different situations, you have to experience them first. And once you experience them, you don't know then how you will you react in the right way to those situations. And there are some, and it's about self-control. It's about knowing your limits. And I don't know how I can put this, but also just not getting sucked into something that can be negative. And there are many ways in which that can happen. And there were times in my 20s where I drank too much alcohol because of the stress. And that is a reality. That's something you need to watch out for, because there's a lot of ways in which, especially when you're having such a freewheeling, a lot of the time fun environment, there can be times when that becomes a problem for a lot of people. And it becomes a way that everyone relaxes together, and for some people that's fine. For others, it can become a bit of a problem. And that's also when you start to use things like that to cope. Again, it's something you need to learn how you can see how that then leads people into really horrible situations. So something you need to learn. And also, big thing about that is we're in an industry of reputation. So if you start doing things that are really stupid, because of a kind of youthful lack of self-control, which a lot of us have, and we get over it, and hopefully we get over it, but that can also really impact on something like your career, which happens, and I have actually ruined relationships because of that. And that's a reality when it is a personal thing, when you have that level of kind of personal interaction between you, bosses, all the people you work with. That kind of happens. So, I mean, in terms of, I think I made all the mistakes in the book, every single one. And
I mean, I think that's a part of being young as well.
It is. Yeah, but I mean,
in saying that though, I can relate as well. I think since doing all this podcast stuff and joining the SRC, I have taken way too much on that I can see Albert nodding. He's like, bitch, you
Yeah.
you do too much. And
Yeah.
it's hard because I think as well, like when you're in all of this stuff as well, like your mental health is something that is going up and down severely. And it's hard to, I guess, like for me personally right now, I'm finding it hard to relax and take breaks because I want to be working constantly because I want to be better. I have people to like, I have teams to lead and things like that, and I don't want them to see that I'm not doing well because then I feel like, I'm not doing enough. But I guess like in relation to all these like mental health stuff, is there any like advice you could give to people who, I think with design as well, it's very hard because a part of the stuff that you're creating means a lot to you and it is a part of yourself as well. And it's hard to, I guess, not take things personally when designs are not good. Like how would you go about that?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing you need to do is try to disconnect yourself from the work that you're doing that is doing someone else's work, right? So you need to put as much of yourself into it that you can, but then step back and go, that's not really mine in the end. Because even if it turns out poorly, I mean, years and years that I did explainers work, if you guys know what explainers are, they're those kind of short, they became a huge thing. I worked at a studio called 6040, then it turned into a studio called The Explainers. And they got bought by Deloitte or something recently or something. But they were a company, or we essentially created all of these incredibly quick but still long videos with voiceover that had animation underneath that explained some kind of concept. And so I did ones for CSIRO, which were actually kind of some nice ones, and but most of them were horrible. And not saying that that the people working on them weren't working their hardest or doing the best work they could, but we just didn't have the time. And the clients were happy with them. We had to be happy with them just because, again, it was kind of money. And again, this is not at all putting down the model, because they needed to be done. And the studio was run to create these things. So everyone is doing exactly what they needed to do. But it just became such of a grind to produce, to know that you didn't have time to produce something anywhere near what you would like it to be. And then what you had to do was just stop thinking about it at all as being your, as an expression of yourself, as any kind of artistic expression. But I mean, that's what design has to be in the end anyway. So that is something, I think that's one of the biggest lessons you have to learn, that you are not an artist, even though you are an artist. Sorry, you're not a pure artist. You are a designer. You are definitely an artist. I am a VFX artist, but I am doing things someone is paying me to make something. I'm not creating this thing to just exist for the sake of its existence. It has a purpose other than itself. And so that's the thing where you go like, yeah, you're 90% of the work you do, you're probably not going to write home about, if you know what I mean. It's, and then, yeah, the only people that do that are probably, your Pixar people and whatever. And even they worked themselves to death, and in 20 years, they've got like a couple of minutes of things in films. So it's, even with that, even when it comes down to the perfect work, which you can kind of count that as, because it's the best it possibly can be, it's so, it itself becomes so grindy because it's so much work that you do kind of lose some of that kind of, there is always a loss of the gloss of some of the kind of like, oh, I'm creating art. That's why it's also very hard to explain to people when you do your work. Everyone's so impressed / oh, you must just draw things all day. It's like, no, my job sometimes is even worse than your horrible accounting job. You know what I mean? It is. That's another thing. Don't have expectations of it being this somehow amazing, just like click that you've got the coolest job in the world. Sometimes you do, but a lot of the time you don't, because it is what it is. Like it has to be, because that's how money works in the world. That's just that is how it works. You don't get to choose every single thing that you do.
I have a student in one of my classes, or did, who used to be a recruiter, and he was saying a lot of people who go into the creative industries get really surprised when they get there and they realize they don't have as much creative freedom as they thought they were going to have. Because at uni, you do the jobs of, like, in an assessment, you do the jobs that a whole team would be doing, really. And you don't get to make a lot of those decisions until you have made it to, mid or high level positions, really, where you're getting to actually direct what direction you're taking a project in. And there's so much stuff even that's template work.
Yeah, use the best place to figure it out. And also, I think that it's important to have some form of healthy expression through some kind of personal work if you get the time. That's not always possible to do, just because, again, if you're working, then you're coming home and you're falling asleep at 7 o'clock, like old people do anyway. But or you're at work till 10, and yeah. But anyway, but whenever you get the chance, it's better. I mean, sorry, if you can, that's should be an outlet, or find some other outlet that isn't necessarily even related to your stuff. So, I mean, pick up photography, pick up something. I mean, make it a creative outlet that still means you can, so you don't lose everything that makes you good, because that's easy to do as well. That's really easy to do, because you can lose your imagination. You could just lose how dynamic your brain is just based on some kind of repetition, and that's how you stagnate. It just means that you can do the one thing you're doing incredibly well. That's fine, but you're never going to do anything else. Because, I mean, again, that's perfectly fine for a lot of people, but for people that want to keep it growing and exploring what their design skills and art can be, that's what you have to do. You have to kind of keep going. You have to keep creating that work just for you, your friends and family. I mean, for social media, if you got social media. I have zero social media, which is apparently a very surprising thing for most people, but I can't stand it, to be honest. But it is a great place to put things up if you need to kind of share, and especially for just silly little art projects. That's what we mostly should do. Like, just share them, have fun.
Yeah. I think social media is a good one. I think one of my lecturers last trimester was talking about that. It's a good idea to, if you're making things, to get them out there into the world, just to feel like you're doing it for a purpose, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. All the just the mechanism of social media, the way it works, is so good for just small things. I mean, if it looks good, someone will see it. So one person will see it and they'll go like, give you a thumbs up. That's a lot of the time, that's all you need. I mean, again, that's the point of social media, so that's why everyone's addicted to it. But when you're creating something that is actually worthwhile, and that expression of your expression of yourself, that is definitely worthwhile. There are some things on social media that are not worthwhile, which I'm not going to go into a rant about. But when you are you and you're expressing yourself in that way, then that's exactly what it should be for. And so for us, that, or for people wanting to express that, then then do it. I would always suggest do it. Do personal work. Just chuck it up there. If you've got 2 friends, awesome. Your 2 friends give you a thumbs up, say that's looking awesome. That's all you need. It really is. Even if it's looking crap at an early stage. That's and that's, I guess, going back to your question before, Coco, the thing about keeping yourself sane is just not to. Another kind of distancing thing from your work is just not to take. You brought it up, not to take everything so personally, not to, and that goes back into what I was saying about how what we do is related to ourselves, is a personal expression, but it's just, if you take everything personally, you just end up falling apart, essentially, because it's not as if you think all your work is horrible. It's just that you can't then grow on the things that you're trying to grow on. You can't make your work better because you're not even taking risks anymore. And it's just really tough to kind of go like, okay, well, I can handle this. Like, how I can handle this stress through. I mean, accepting that it's not going to be perfect, but that also comes back to always be honest. Well, biggest thing that when I fell apart again when I was a bit younger, it was always because that I said I could do things that I just couldn't do, and not in terms of like technicality, and not in terms of that, but in terms of if someone made an unreasonable request of me, I smiled and said yes.
That's me.
That is, and they were unreasonable requests. Like, people would tell me that I was working for a month, like, and have it down on paper, and then that paper wouldn't be around anymore. And then 2 weeks into the job, they'd go, "Oh yes, all your stuff's due tomorrow," right? And like, it's just being honest about, like, so firstly, don't trust everyone. Sorry, there are dodgy people out there. Don't be, you need to kind of be strong about being, and people appreciate it when you are honest. It's harder to be when you have less experience, when you're younger, but when, like, even a tiny bit of experience, you can just go, I can't, I need help. And that's something that people are more and more, are better and better at kind of appreciating. But it always has been in the past where, like, that, or used to be where that was not even, there was like, it was weakness and stuff. But now it's not so much anymore. Like, we've made so many, even in 10 years, we've made huge steps. And the design industry has always been incredibly open and inclusive, but it's still been very much a task. The work stuff was, because it's related to you and your life is kind of connected to it, and your sense of self is connected to it. They can ask you to do anything. I mean, and you're going to say yes to it. And that's one of the biggest things you have to learn not to do. Just don't say yes. Just don't say yes to everything, because then it's on you as well. Because then when it fails, because sometimes it will, like, it's not necessarily their fault. It's not their fault because they asked you and you said yes, right? So all the responsibility will always flow down. And so you have to take responsibility what you do say. But when someone asks you to say something that you can't do, just don't do it. Don't do it. Even if you, I don't know. Yeah, and like, maybe if it's the one opportunity you'll ever get, but I don't believe that's the case. I honestly think that if you work hard enough, the next opportunity is just there. It's not it. Yeah, like, you miss one, it might be 6 months. That really sucks. But if you keep going, you persevere, everyone that works that hard, because that's the thing, you're proving that you're working hard. If you can work that hard, then you will get that next opportunity. That's the thing, because it's so difficult to watch people become jaded and give up. And it's like, some of the best people in the world had horribly difficult paths, and then people with it had incredibly easy paths, like I was lucky to have. Yeah, I mean, that also doesn't necessarily mean anything other than that one step was easy, right? If you know what I mean? Like, there's like all these different steps that are involved in this. So, as long as you work hard, you can work your way through them.
Yeah.
And don't go crazy. Just don't go crazy. It's so easy to go crazy. Yeah.
I think all the best people are just a tiny bit crazy.
For sure. And again, like, it's with the creatives, you're always going to get quite a lot more crazy just in there. Just because.
Oh yeah, for sure. You have to be a tiny bit crazy. All designers are crazy.
Yeah, that's why for the most part they're so accepted, because, like, if you're going to accept me, then I have to accept you, I mean, it's mostly just, I don't care, like, you're awesome or you're not awesome, right? You're like, it doesn't matter what other things you are or whatever, because you might wear those ridiculous clothes. And it's funny, like, in my head, like, there are definitely people I've worked with who just have the most outrageous fashion sense in the world, and I'm just like, you look awesome. And it's just like, there isn't as much judgment in that way as there is in some other places. But yeah. It can be a very funny place to be.
Now, we were talking about having your own sort of method of creative expression. You have one little way that you like to express yourself creatively that we'd love you to show us.
You word that so weirdly.
That was a good segue. No, well, Ahmed is alluding to the fact that in especially, well, online, I don't do it when I'm teaching in person, but we've had to do so many online classes recently that an important thing that I've been trying to get my students to do, especially in 3D, is you're waiting for stuff a lot of the time. And like, so if you're doing a render, and like a single frame render can be like 20 minutes or something, but if it's hours you're waiting, obviously you're going to do something else. But if you're sitting there for just 5 minutes, you need a break, you need something to do. And so my suggestion to my students has always been, and I've been trying to get a ukulele band together from all my students, and not one one student had a ukulele, but they didn't even. But anyway, that's alluding to the fact that I play the ukulele. A long, long time ago, there was a volcano living all alone in the middle of the sea. Yeah, no, that's all that.
I love
yes,
that.
that is the horrible that it is. Good. But yes, the whole point of that is just to essentially, I don't know, just have something always there. Have something always there just to entertain you. And I did a lot of music, so it was kind of natural that it was going to be something musical. And I just kind of bought a ukulele for $30 and then started playing the ukulele. It's just fun. It just is fun. And that I guess that goes back to a lot of what we're talking about as well, about trying to, and I think this has been a really good thing about me teaching, is just making me so much less self-conscious. Because I am a ball of anxiety, and just, I mean, that's just that is just who I am, and yeah, and pure like self-judgment and self-consciousness, but teaching was an amazing way to break. And I could always do public speaking, but I still cared about like what individuals thought of me. But now with teaching and stuff, like after a while, you just stop. Like, see, I would not have been able to just, because I mean, that was a ridiculous thing. The singing this thing it's gonna be immortalized as some ridiculous thing. Could be made into a meme, and it's actually not. I really don't care. you know, it's that thing where it just stops. It stops being as worrying, and that's, I guess, another one of those huge things. Especially like so many of us have so much anxiety that if it is possible to work towards just trying to just chip away at that, just to chip away at that slowly, eventually it does get a little bit easier. It does.
Yeah.
Or it can. It doesn't. It's not a cure-all for anything by any stretch of the imagination, but it's all possible. And then you can just sit here, even while you're having conversation, just strum on your ukulele, and then you guys can get one from Big W for I think $10. So
I bought a guitar at the start of lockdown. I haven't touched it, but I probably should. I played guitar like a while ago, and yeah, it's been years since I've been at musically anything.
Yeah, I've got a bassoon sitting in my cupboard. I played bassoon for many years. Went around Australia in a bassoon quartet back when I was at school. A lot of fun. But yes, my dad had a choice between being a doctor or a professional flautist. he went for neurology, as it was.
I tried guitar many years ago, but the problem was that I couldn't practice at home because I'd be too self-conscious about everyone else listening to me play it while I'm practicing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's again. I mean, that's just what we're talking about. Just somehow I need to put that away. But you're older now. Pick it up. You'll be fine. I mean, sound like dying cats. Your neighbors will laugh at you, but then you can go like, "Yeah, I'm learning. I know I'm shit. Yep, sweet. I mean, I'll be better tomorrow." Or just again, don't care. Try not to. At least try, which is very difficult to do. I know.
Well, that's the thing with starting anything. You're never going to be good at the beginning. It takes time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's an interesting thing. If we, because that's a segue into kind of another topic in design and especially technical design, or at least doing things like 3D and VFX and stuff that really requires that, and games as well. is that I am trying to figure out how you can induce what I call the click. You know, when you're using a piece of software, it is so impossible. I'm just saying impossible for a head to get around what 3D is, how 3D works, right? When you first look at 3D, like, what is this? And every single person has a different rate at which they get to a point where they have enough understanding to create something. Right? Every single human being has, that I've found, at least, and again, this is a interesting kind of study that I'm not study that I'm doing on students, just to think about how it is that they are getting their heads around all this content. And I mean, and it's true that also some people decide that it's not for them. Fair enough, because it's just something that does also require some, like, a specific way to be wired, like anything. There's some people good at maths, some people not good at maths, all that kind of thing. But when you pick up something, like you're talking about picking up a new musical instrument or anything, it is just that practice that gets you there. And there are a few different ways that people do try to learn what we try to do, again, 3D and things like that. And at the moment, it's so much focused on learning by doing. So if you know, so going on YouTube and finding a tutorial for the thing you want to do, right? That is good to a point, but it never actually, at least in my opinion, don't worry, I use tutorials every day if I need to. I don't know how to do every single thing in the world. There are a bajillion things I don't know how to do. It's more that I know the general structures and then go, like, just need that little extra piece of information. But when you've learnt something just by this is how you do the thing and don't understand why, that becomes the problem. Like, this is actually a message to my students, where if there's a concept lecture, something about how something works, I know that thing doesn't have, like, a clickable button to, you know, like, create the object and things like that, but don't just go through it once, go through it 2 or 3 times, have that, like, listen to that, even if it's a little bit boring, or it's just like, oh yeah, I kind of get that concept. I can guarantee you don't. And that's not a judgment on you. It's more like, it's just that's after one listening to a really difficult topic and a new concept to learn, you don't understand that. And I really think that that's really important for students to begin to actually get close to that click moment where it actually makes sense and they can build on that. Before you get to your click moment, all you can do is follow a tutorial, is follow a click button thing. And that's what at least I and all of us are trying to avoid. Trying to avoid is the thing where I'm only teaching you how to do that one thing. Because, I mean, if you go into the industry and you know how to do that one thing, what's the point? And so it's more trying to understand the underlying things that make something like this work. And not in a technical, and not in a sense like you have to understand, like, how the software was written or anything like that. But it's like, but it's just the difficult part is not doing the difficult technical thing. The difficult part is learning how the thing works, or how to create the thing underneath. I don't know. I don't even know what to say. But yeah, that's the difficult part. So it needs a much more, and that's why I also think that focus from you and your lecturers needs to be, where you have discussions about this stuff, and then the assessments, what you should do is do whatever you want as an expression of that, but you need to understand what you're doing before you even bother starting. Because if you just create something that's, I mean, by the way, also, if you don't understand it, you're going to not create the work that's as good. It's just not going to, you're not going to be able to play with it. And the whole point of what we do is play, and using our imaginations to actually create that work and play. Because what do you? I don't know what courses you guys do.
I'm doing UWeb and WEX.
Graphic design.
I'm doing UX and web.
UWeb and WEX. The quality UWeb and WEX. Right. Yeah. So you guys in that. Yeah, that's interesting because I guess I was saying before, like my design degree, like I cherish all the design I did, like cherish it, because that was, again, it was a digital media course, but I did all the typography and all the layout and all that stuff, and like and all the physical things, and I can still bind a book that I did with Dave Walsh. If I know you guys aren't in Sydney, are you? Yeah, and that's something as well that I think that a lot of artists kind of losing now as well, like that those design skills that were kind of, but that's more just a kind of general thing where, again, you need to know why that thing looks good. Like, and there are some people that are purely talented in the way that they can just create something that looks amazing. Most of us aren't like that. We need to kind of learn and then be able to play and get experience and make something look better. Because I'm very obsessed with the fact that what's the point of making something if it doesn't look good? We all want to be able to, this is a visual medium, and we're not going to the moon here. We're making things that are entertainment the vast majority of times, right? Vast majority of times we are. And even when they're educational, they're supposed to be entertaining to actually help with that educational process. And so, again, we're not trying to go to we don't need them to be this like kind of bland thing that works technically but is uninteresting. And that's that is starting to get, that is lost a bit. That is lost a bit without that design element. And hopefully you have a great art director and creative director and stuff that makes that happen. But look at some things and they just don't have that level of kind of interest and stuff, because you don't have the individual doing it doesn't have that interest. But I don't know. It is what it is. But who knows?
Yeah, no, I definitely get what you're saying, 100%, and it's been an interesting experience for me to touch on everything from like what you were talking about. Where so for me, for example, in my first, when we started off with our like HTML and CSS in trimester 1, you get sort of handheld a bit more because it's your first trimester, and that particular subject, there are a lot of people that do it, ranging from comms to anything. But as we progressed and got to JavaScript, you started to get a lot more. The concept started to get a lot more because JavaScript is actually a programming language now, so it's different. And I'm just going back now to what you were talking about around, you're not just going to be able to watch one tutorial and suddenly it clicks. It takes a lot of time. And my lecturer then was trying to get us to understand that and say, this is a different language now to what you've been learning before. You need to go home and spend 2 or 3 hours each week playing with this. Otherwise, you're not really you're gonna get to the assessment and not know what to do. Now, I didn't listen to this advice. And unfortunately, it meant that I got to my assessment and I didn't know what I was doing. Because I'd get to the lesson and would be doing it with the lecturer, and I'm like, yeah, this is easy, I get this 100%. And then I'm by myself and I'm looking at this and I'm like, I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't remember. I wrote these lines of code, but I don't know what any of them do.
And it's not something that you can just do without thinking either.
No, exactly. And again, like especially JavaScript, you probably could create. You did a tutorial. Not saying you, but a person does a tutorial, does this awesome animated box that like does awesome stuff, and then brings this thing, and then they don't know how to do a header above it. I'm like, you know how to, you know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't mean that the product isn't any better by you being able to follow. You being able to follow, it's an amazing way, again, once you have that knowledge, because the way I describe me doing, like, say that I need to find out how to do something, and again, there's, like, as you know, on YouTube there's a tutorial how to do anything, even incredibly high level stuff as well. And so I'll just type it into YouTube, and then it'll be like a 45-minute tutorial, and then I go, okay, well, the bit I probably want is about 45 minutes in, and I went, oh, that's a connection I need to make, and then cut it. And that just comes from experience, knowing the underlying stuff, but I just didn't know one element of it, and someone else did, and this is the beauty of how we kind of interact now. Someone else is nice enough to put that out there, and it's not as though that every time I'm learning it from first principles, because that's the unfortunate way in which someone could get lured into that trap where I can just do those things, because every time they're not even learning it first principles, they're just doing it from first principles. They don't have the underlying stuff. So yes, I wish there was some way to like beam into your brains and talk about students. Exactly that problem there, man, where it is like, guys, you need to be doing, like, even if I give you an exercise, like I give exercise to my students, and to be honest, vast majority of them just don't do it. And because they're not specifically, some of them aren't specifically marked and stuff like that, there's ramifications, but not huge ones. And then it's just like, if you're not even doing these like 20-minute exercises, you really have to consider, and this is going to be a real thing. Like, you have to be there for as I said earlier, you have to be working hard. If you're not willing to do that, you need to really like address why not. Like, is this, and you need to think like, what am I doing here? Why am I here? And that's not a question to make everyone question themselves. It's more just to give you motivation to actually maybe do more, because it seems like you're already doing so much, but like, try make it fun somehow. This learning process should actually be really fun. It should be like, always trying to make things more game-like in so far as like, play around with it, do that thing, figuring it out yourself, play with it until you understand it. That's where we should be going. But so much of it, it's tough when you can't really seem to you can't instill in that, like, this is really important for you to, as like, do 3 hours a week, do whatever, like, try and play around, create that cool thing without following tutorial, that kind of stuff. And yeah, but I'm sure since then you've probably improved your practices, have you? Oh, you still...
Oh yes.
Yeah. Yeah, good.
Yeah, I got there in the end, thankfully.
Yeah,
but not as soon as I could have. I think it's easy to forget as well that we're not here we're paying to be here. So you really should make the most of it, because it's coming out of your pocket.
That's right. And that's another thing, like, also, your lecturers you are paying your lecturers. Doesn't mean you own them in any sense, but use them. And also, every lecturer has their own foibles, and we are all individuals as well. But you just need to figure out what the best way is to get the most out of your lecturer. Like, you might have a lecturer that only is available on this day. Then use that time. Like, use that, because that person has all of these things that you don't even know about that they can give you. And especially, like, the reason why we're here is to help you. So it's always a big thing just trying to get communication going as well, because that's going to be a lesson you can learn for all of your jobs, just communicating. There are people that struggle with it, that need more practice. There are people that are really good at it. There are people that are over the top and don't think through before they communicate. But you know what I mean? Like, there are all these different ways in which we're not trying to like kind of flatten everyone to communicate in exactly the same way. It's more that you need to learn how to do it in the most efficient way possible, so you actually get what you want out of a given situation. And that's not manipulation. It's just more like, you want something, you should be able to ask for it and get it without, like, in a way that's kind of kind of in a normal way, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, I think what we'll do is we'll do our quickfire questions, and then we can wrap up. The first one is, do you have any secret talents?
No, I don't. I honestly don't. Like, going back to having no shame anymore. If I have a talent, I'm just tempted to just run. I don't think I do have any secret talents. And I guess, are you asking things like, can I curl my tongue and stuff? No, it's like, I need more interesting than that. And no, I'll say no. I think all my talents are on my sleeve, if you can even call them talents. So all the things that I like to do are
there. What are your top 3 favorite movies / TV shows?
Oh, jeez. This is whenever.
And also, why
really
they're your favorites as well.
Sure. It's always really tough for me, because people ask these questions stuff, and I never have answers, because I don't think about it. It's the way my brain works. Some people think about things as favorites, and I never have. But honest enough, like, what do I enjoy watching? I do actually really. I'm gonna be lame and go some Miyazaki and some Pixar, but some Pixar. So actually, no, I'll just go for go for 3D movies, just because it breaks down what I do, kind of thing. I controversially think the best Pixar movie is WALL-E. very controversially, because it was incredibly informative for me as the way in which you can just imbue so much life into an inanimate object, and just how animation can be this kind of vessel for that, and no one does that better. And in that movie, it's they are alive, right? And it just grabbed me as a kind of opening for me into animation in general, where that's just the subtlety of motion and having this box that actually you care for, in a sense, by the end of it, because even though it's not alive, but it is alive to you now. I just think, when I watched that, because I guess, when did that come out? A while ago,
I think 2008 maybe, or maybe earlier.
Yeah, so I think that was probably just really influential to me. So Wally, that was a long-winded. So again, controversial, because I'm saying that's the best Pixar movie, and I think it objectively is not. I think objectively it's not, but definitely for me, just because it had such a big impact. What have we got? Which Miyazaki should I go for? Because I'm just going cliches now. Should I go Howl's? Yeah, Moving Castle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah. Just again,
That's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, it's not actually perfect, but again, it's just the animation and the worlds, the animation, the worlds. It's just something that is. It's just beyond, it's just beyond what any of us could ever imagine, because we are not him, right? And that can be a sad thing. You're like, damn, my imagination isn't that good, but it doesn't matter. It is this thing that gives you something. It really hits you in the core. It is what the purest forms of art should be, right? And so that transcends any kind of entertainment value that it has. It is just this thing that you watch and you just feel. And you just feel the whole way through. And so I think that's what, what's awesome about it. And then what, should I have some kind of live action movie? Again, I just don't think about this stuff. It's something really bad. No, Snakes on a Plane? No. Actually, I do watch Shawshank Redemption a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, Shawshank, that's another classic, cliche. That's on a lot of people's top, but I do actually watch that movie quite a bit. So I think I'll just count that as whenever it comes on, whenever it just pops up on my Netflix again. I'm just like, oh yeah, not doing anything. I'll just watch that again. So it's probably the movie I watched most of my life. So it must be. I mean, it must go there. But again, that's just because it's a good movie. I mean, really, not much more to say about that. I'm not a movie critic. It's just that I really enjoy it.
What are you most afraid of?
Afraid of? I don't have any phobias, which is good. Just in terms of functionality, I feel bad for people with real phobias. But what am I most afraid of? Oh no, I was like, oh, no, that one's a bit too deep for this. I don't know. I guess I'm someone that I guess I'm most afraid of not living a fulfilled life, one that actually has everything in it that I want, and I don't need control over it. But I've only got one life. That's all I got. And I don't want to get to. I don't want to get to 80 if I make it that touch wood that I'm getting there. I don't want to get there and not have, it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be exciting or anything, but being fulfilled. I want to be fulfilled. I don't know how to be fulfilled. So hopefully in the next 50 years, I got 47 years, I can figure out how to be fulfilled. But I think that probably is the most existential. I think that's a real fear. I'm essentially afraid of not using my life the way that it could have been. I only have one. So if I waste it, what's the point? I've wasted a lot of it so far. So I've got a lot to make up for. I really have a lot to make up for.
What is your favorite ice cream flavor?
always Haagen-Dazs strawberry. Strawberry. I'm a berry person. Sometimes salted caramel, but that's number 2. That's strawberries. Pretty much in Haagen-Dazs best. Went on special at Coles for $7. Yeah, you know I'm buying it. You know I'm getting it. So look out the ice cream section. Haagen-Dazs gets down to $7. They're tiny, but they're delicious.
Okay, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for coming on the show with us, Tom. It's been a pleasure.
No worries. Yeah, it's been fun.